My parents made me believe I was the problem every time the family argued. For years I carried guilt for everything that went wrong. But recently, I discovered a secret they had been hiding for decades. One that explained all the lies. In that moment, I realized I wasn't the problem at all. I was just the scapegoat in a family built on deception. Harry, I always thought I was broken. Every tension, every moment of silence in our house, Mom and Dad made sure I knew it was my fault. Just behaved better. Why can't be more like other kids? Or tearing this family apart. So when Sarah came into my at 28, beautiful and kind and somehow seeing good in me, I clung to her like drowning man to driftwood. She was everything my family said I didn't deserve, and maybe that's why I sabotaged it. It started small. Staying late at work when I didn't need to. Not answering her calls right away. Creating distance because some sick part of me believed I wasn't worth her love anyway. Then came the work conference in Chicago. 3 days away from the I was convinced I was ruining just by existing in it. Her name was Jessica. She laughed at my jokes, didn't roll her eyes when I rambled about work stuff. For the first time in someone was looking at me like I was interesting. Not broken. Not the problem. We had drinks, then more drinks. I told her it was just talking. Just feeling normal for once. But when she leaned in close at that hotel bar, when she touched my arm and said I was refreshing, I didn't pull away. I leaned in too. The kiss lasted maybe 10 seconds. 10 seconds that would destroy everything good I'd ever had. I pulled back, made an excuse, ran to my room. Spent the night staring at the ceiling, Sarah's face burning in my mind. Sweet Sarah who made me coffee every morning and never once called me the problem. I should have called her right then. Should have confessed and begged forgiveness. Instead I came home and acted like nothing happened. Kissed her hello. Let her make dinner while I sat there carrying this secret. How was the conference? She asked, stirring pasta sauce. Fine. Boring presentations mostly smile. I'm a boring, hardworking man. I'm proud of. The guilt hit like a physical. But I swallowed it down with everything else I'd learned to swallow growing. Problems were meant to be buried. Truth was dangerous. For 2 months I carried it. 2 months of her planning our future while I lived in the past. She started talking about marriage, about kids, about the house we'd buy with the picket fence and everything. And every word felt like another nail in my coffin because I knew I didn't deserve any of it. The breakdown came on a Tuesday. She was showing me wedding venues on her laptop, eyes bright with dreams I'd already killed. What do you think of this one? She turned the screen toward me. Some beautiful garden venue where other couples who hadn't their lives got to celebrate love. I stared at those happy couples in the photos and something inside me cracked. I can't. Oh, she looked confused. Can't what? If don't like this venue we can. No Sarah. I can't marry. I can't. I cheated. The laptop slid off her lap. I watched her face change. Watched the light go out of her eyes like someone had flipped a switch. What do you mean? So I told her. Everything. The conference, Jessica, the kiss, the 2 months of lying. I word vomited it all while she sat there looking like I'd physically struck her. When I finished, the silence stretched forever. She was crying now, these quiet tears that somehow worse than if she'd screamed. Was it worth it? Her voice was barely a whisper. No. God, it meant nothing. She meant nothing. Or everything to me, Sarah. Have to know that. She wiped her eyes, but more tears kept coming. If I was everything, why wasn't I enough to stop? I tried to reach for her, but she pulled away like my touch burned. I need to leave. Sarah, please. We can work through this. I'll do anything. Live. Now. I packed a bag with shaking hands while she sat on our couch, still crying those devastating quiet tears. At the door I turned back. I love. She looked at me then, and I saw something I'd never seen before in her eyes. Not anger. Not disgust. Love doesn't do what did. The door closed behind me with a click that sounded like the end of everything. I drove to my parents' house because I had nowhere else to go. Sat in their driveway for an hour trying to figure out how to explain that I'd become exactly what they always said I was. The problem. When I finally went inside, Mom was in the kitchen making dinner. She looked with that expression I knew so well, like I was already disappointing her just by existing. What are doing here? Where's Sarah? We're broke. Dad appeared in the doorway. What happened? Or okay. What did do? Because of course it was my fault. It was always my fault. I messed, Dad. I really messed. Mom sighed that long suffering sigh I'd heard my entire. I knew this would happen. That girl was too good for anyway. We tried to warn, never warned me about anything. I snapped. Just told me I wasn't good enough. Because or not. Dad's voice rose. Look at, 30 years old, losing the best thing that ever happened to. When are going to learn their own worst enemy? That familiar shame washed over me, the same shame that had driven me to that hotel bar in Chicago. The same shame that whispered I didn't deserve good things. But this time something else came with it. Anger. Maybe. I said quietly. I learned to be my own worst enemy from watching too. The kitchen went dead silent. What did say? Mom's voice was ice. I looked at them both, really looked, and suddenly I was 8 years old again, cowering while they screamed at each other about money, about Dad's drinking, about Mom's sister, about everything except the real problems in their marriage. And then turning on me, making it my fault for leaving toys out, for being too loud, for existing at all. Nothing, I said because I was still their trained scapegoat. I'm sorry. Can I stay here tonight? Mom softened slightly. Of course, honey. Room's still the same. I went upstairs to my childhood bedroom with its faded sports posters and participation trophies. Lay down on the same bed where I'd cried to sleep so many nights, convinced I was the reason my family was falling apart. Now I'd made it true. I really had destroyed the only good thing in my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Come get stuff tomorrow when I'm at work. Leave key. I stared at those words until they blurred. Tomorrow she'd erase me from her like I'd never existed. Like those 3 years meant nothing. But they did mean something. They meant everything. And I'd thrown it all away because I was too broken to believe I deserved love. Just like my parents taught me. 3 weeks after Sarah kicked me out, I was living like a ghost in my childhood room, working my job on autopilot, coming home to Mom's passive-aggressive comments about getting my together, and spending my nights staring at Sarah's social media profiles like some kind of digital masochist. She'd changed her relationship status to single. Changed her profile picture from one of us to one of just her, smiling at something outside the frame. Someone else was probably making her laugh now. Someone who hadn't thrown away 3 years for a meaningless kiss with a stranger. The worst part, she looked happier. Even through a phone screen, I could see she was lighter without me dragging her down. My parents' house felt like a museum of my failures. Every corner held memories of being told I wasn't enough, wasn't trying hard enough, wasn't grateful enough. And now, at 30, I was right back where I started. Need to stop moping, Mom said one morning over coffee. Sarah's moved on. Maybe should too. It's been 3 weeks, and sitting around feeling sorry for isn't going to bring her back. She stirred her coffee with sharp, precise motions. Maybe this is a blessing in disguise. That girl had wrapped around her finger. I stared at her. Sarah was the best thing that ever happened to me. Sarah was controlling, always wanting to know where we're planning future without asking what wanted. Mom's voice had that familiar edge, the one that came right before she started rewriting history. We tried to tell, but never listen. That's not what happened at all. Isn't it? Think about it, sweetheart. When was the last time made a decision for? She picked apartment, furniture, probably even clothes. She didn't pick anything. We decided together. That's what couples do. Mom's laugh was bitter. Is that what call it? Because from where I sat, it looked like forgotten how to think for. Something cold settled in my stomach. This was familiar too. The way Mom could take my memories and twist them until I questioned what really happened. Like when I was 12 and Dad got fired from his job. For weeks, they fought about money, about his drinking, about Mom's spending. Screaming matches that shook the walls. Then one day, Dad sat me down and explained it was my fault. If I hadn't needed new school clothes, if I hadn't broken my arm and needed a cast, if I hadn't cost them so much money, he wouldn't have been stressed at work. Wouldn't have made the mistakes that got him fired. I believed him, carried that guilt for years. Now Mom was doing it again, taking my guilt over cheating and reshaping it into something else, making Sarah the villain in a story where I was supposed to be the victim. She wasn't controlling, I said quietly. No, then why did feel the need to, what did call it, cheat on her? The word hit like a, but Mom's tone was almost gentle now, like she was helping me understand something important. Maybe Hart was trying to tell something. Maybe felt trapped and didn't even realize it. I wanted to argue, but doubt was creeping in. That familiar, childhood doubt that made me question everything I thought I knew about. Had Sarah been controlling? She did always have opinions about things, strong opinions. No stop, that wasn't fair to her. Having preferences wasn't the same as being controlling. Wanting to build it together wasn't manipulation. But the seed was planted and it grew over the following days. Every memory of Sarah got filtered through this new lens Mom had given me. Her excitement about wedding planning became pushiness. Her concern when I worked late became jealousy. Her love became chains. It was easier than admitting I destroyed something beautiful because I was broken. 2 months after the breakup, I started going out again. Hit bars with some guys from work. Tried to remember what it felt like to be single. Tried to convince I was free. That's when I met Rachel. She was everything Sarah wasn't. Spontaneous where Sarah was a planner. Carefree where Sarah was responsible. She laughed at my jokes, flirted shamelessly, and made me feel like the most interesting man in the room. Or so easy to talk to. She said after our third date, most guys my age are so serious all the time. I was 4 years older than her, but she made me feel young again. Made me forget about Sarah's disappointed face about the I'd thrown away. We moved fast, maybe too fast. But after months of feeling like a failure, Rachel's enthusiasm was intoxicating. 6 months later she moved in with me. I'd gotten my own apartment by then, a small one-bedroom that felt empty until she filled it with her energy and her chaos and her complete lack of interest in planning anything more than a day ahead. Why worry about tomorrow? She'd say when I brought things like savings accounts or 5-year plans. We're happy now. Isn't that enough? It should have been. But sometimes late at night, I'd remember Sarah's excitement about our future. The way she'd research mortgage rates and talk about the kids we'd have and the trips we'd take when we retired. I'd loved that about her once. The way she made me feel like I was part of something bigger than just today. But Mom was right. That was probably just Sarah trying to control me. Rachel and I got engaged after a year, not because we'd talked about marriage and decided we were ready, but because she saw a ring she liked in a jewelry store window and said, hint. I proposed 2 weeks later. Spontaneous, romantic. Everything Sarah would have said was reckless and impulsive. The wedding was small. Rachel didn't want to wait, didn't want to plan some big elaborate thing. Let's just do it, she said. All that matters is us. My parents loved her. Finally, Mom said. Found someone who doesn't try to manage every aspect of point. Standing at the altar, watching Rachel walk down the aisle in a dress she'd bought 3 days earlier, I felt hollow. Happy but hollow. I pushed the feeling down. This was what freedom felt like. This was what it meant to be with someone who loved me for who I was, not who they wanted me to become. The first year of marriage was a whirlwind. Rachel quit her job to focus on her art. I worked extra hours to support us both. She'd spend days painting, then weeks not painting, then days crying about not being good enough, then weeks being manically optimistic about her next project. I learned to navigate her moods, to be supportive when she was down and enthusiastic when she was. It was exhausting, but I told this was what real love looked like. Messy and unpredictable and alive. Not like whatever I'd had with Sarah, which had apparently been some kind of prison. But then Rachel got pregnant. She told me on a Tuesday morning, same kind of morning when I'd confessed to Sarah about Chicago. But this time, instead of destruction, there was fresh start. Are happy, she asked, searching my face. I think I was, but underneath the happiness was something that felt like panic. We should get married, I said, then realized we already were. We should buy a house, I said instead. Why? This place is fine. For a baby, Rachel, we need space, a yard, good schools nearby. The baby won't even notice that stuff for years. Let's just see how things go. And there it was, that familiar feeling of swimming upstream, of being the only one thinking about tomorrow while everyone else lived for today. But this time I was the problem. I was being controlling. Planning ahead instead of just trusting that things would work out. At least that's what I told. Because the alternative was admitting that maybe, just maybe, Sarah hadn't been trying to control me at all. Maybe she'd just been trying to love me. Emma was born on a rainy Thursday in October, and the moment they placed her in my arms everything changed. Not in the beautiful, affirming way people talk about. In a terrifying, earth-shifting way that made me realize I'd been playing house while real waited in the wings. She was so small, so dependent, so completely innocent of the mess I'd made of everything that led to her existence. Rachel recovered from delivery like it was a mild inconvenience. 3 days later, she was talking about getting back to her art, about how the baby would just nap while she painted, about how nothing really had to change. Everything has to change, I said, looking down at Emma sleeping in my arms. She needs us to change. Worry too much. Rachel was already dressed, putting on makeup. Babies are simple. Food, sleep, love. We've got this. But we didn't have this. I knew it the first week home when Rachel slept through Emma's 2am crying because, are so much better with her than I am. I knew it when she left for a girls' weekend when Emma was 6 weeks old because, I need to still be me, not just someone's mother. I knew it when I found awake at 3am, feeding my daughter and thinking about Sarah. Sarah, who would have researched every aspect of baby care. Who would have had schedules and backup plans and a college fund started before Emma was even born. Sarah, who would have been an amazing mother because she understood that love meant preparation, not just feeling. The comparison felt like betrayal, but I couldn't stop. Every time Rachel made a careless decision that put Emma at risk, I thought about Sarah's careful nature. Every time Rachel forgot to buy diapers or left bottles unwashed, I remembered Sarah's attention to details that actually mattered. When Emma was 4 months old, I ran into Sarah at the grocery store. She was in the baby aisle, loading formula into her cart, and my heart stopped. She looked radiant, glowing in a way I'd never seen before. Sarah, she turned, and for a split second, her face lit like it used to when she saw me. Then the light died. Look, She nodded, one hand moving protectively to her barely visible bump. 5 months. The 5 months. She'd gotten pregnant barely a year after we broke. Found someone else, built the she'd wanted, that I'd convinced was somehow wrong for wanting. Congratulations. The word tasted like ash. I'm happy for her. She studied my face like she was trying to read something there. I heard got married, and had a baby.
Yeah.
Emma, she's 4 months. That's nice. But her voice was careful now, polite. The voice she used with strangers. We stood there in the baby aisle, surrounded by all the products I was learning to navigate as a new parent, and I wanted to tell her everything. How I thought about her every day. How I'd made the worst mistake of how I was drowning in a marriage that looked like freedom but felt like chaos. Instead I said, look happy. Her smile was real this time, but not for me. I am. David's wonderful. He's everything She stopped herself, but I knew how the sentence ended. Everything I wasn't. I should go, she said. Take care of Point. I watched her walk away, pushing her cart full of carefully chosen baby supplies, probably with a list organized by Azel efficiency. Everything I'd once thought was uptight now looked like love in action. That night, I told Rachel about running into Sarah. The controlling one. I flinched. She wasn't controlling. Rachel looked from her sketch pad. I thought said she was always trying to manage by. Had I said that? Maybe I had. The lies had become so tangled with truth that I couldn't remember anymore. She's pregnant, I said. Good for her. I'm sure she's got it all planned out to the minute. Rachel went back to her sketching. Unlike some of us who know how to live in the moment. But living in the moment was failing Emma. Living in the moment meant running out of diapers at midnight, meant forgetting pediatrician appointments, meant Rachel disappearing for hours to find inspiration, while I juggled work and parenting. The breaking point came when Emma was 8 months old. I came home from work to find her screaming in her crib, diaper overflowing, while Rachel painted in the living room with headphones on. How long has she been crying? I shouted over Emma's wails. Rachel pulled off her headphones, annoyed at the interruption. I don't know. A while. She's fine. Babies cry. Her diaper is soaked through. She's probably been like this for hours. Don't be so dramatic. I checked on her at lunch. It was 6 p.m. As I changed Emma's diaper, her little face red from crying. Something inside me snapped. This wasn't freedom. This wasn't spontaneous love. This was neglect dressed as artistic temperament. That weekend I drove to my parents' house with Emma. I needed help, needed advice, needed something to make sense of the mess my had become. She's beautiful. Mom said, holding Emma while I sat at the same kitchen table where she convinced me Sarah was controlling. Looks just like did as a baby. I don't know what I'm doing, Mom. None of us do, honey. Parenting is learn as go. But Rachel, she doesn't seem to care about learning, about planning ahead, about any of it. Dad looked from his newspaper. Some people aren't out for responsibility. Mother and I tried to tell. Didn't tell me anything about Rachel. Loved her. We loved that she didn't try to run like the other one. The other one. Sarah. Who was probably at home with her husband, preparing for their baby with the same thoughtfulness she'd brought to everything else in her. Maybe, I said quietly, being run by someone who loves is better than running wild on own. The silence in the kitchen was deafening. What are saying? Mom's voice was sharp. I'm saying maybe I was wrong. About Sarah. That girl made miserable, Dad said. Complained about her constantly. No, I didn't. Complained about her. Told me she was controlling when she was just responsible. Mom's face was changing, hardening into an expression I recognized from childhood arguments. Don't dare blame us for choices. I'm not blaming for cheating. That was all me. But I am blaming for making me think love was supposed to feel like walking on eggshells instead of feeling supported. Woo supported. No, taught me I was broken. And when someone finally loved me despite that, convinced me it was unhealthy. The words hung in the air like smoke. Emma gurgled in Mom's arms, oblivious to the family pattern finally being named. Want to know what's unhealthy? Dad's voice was rising. Coming here and mother when she's trying to help with daughter. I'm not anyone. I'm finally telling the truth. Truth. Mom said coldly. Always has to be about, doesn't it? Even when we're little, everything was our fault, never yours. And there it was. The gaslight I'd lived under my entire. The reason I'd been so eager to believe I didn't deserve Sarah's love, so quick to sabotage the best thing that ever happened to me. I was a child, I said. Children aren't responsible for their parents' marriage problems, or their parents' drinking, or their parents' financial troubles. I was just the easiest person to blame. Get out. Mum's voice was ice. Take baby and revisionist history and get out of my house. I took Emma from her arms, this innocent little girl who would never be anyone's scapegoat if I had anything to say about it. Right, I said. I should go. But not because I'm wrong, because I finally see who really are. In the car driving away from my childhood home for what I suspected might be the last time, I called my sister. We hadn't spoken in months, maybe years. The family had taught us that too, divide and conquer. Never let the kids compare notes. James. Is everything okay? Lisa, I need to ask something. Growing. Did ever feel like everything was fault? The pause was long enough to confirm what I already knew. Oh my God, she whispered. Felt it too. We talked for 2 hours, compared memories, filled in gaps, built a picture of our childhood that looked nothing like the story our parents had told us individually. Lisa had been the rebellious one, blamed for bringing negativity into the house with her attitude. I'd been the one, blamed for being too needy, too emotional, too much trouble. Neither of us had been the problem. We'd both been convenient targets for parents who couldn't face their own issues. I ruined my because of them. I told her. I had someone who loved me, really loved me, and I hid away because I believed their lies about what I deserved. It's not too late, Lisa said. Maybe it's not too late to fix things, but it was too late. Sarah was married now, pregnant with another man's child. The I destroyed was rebuilt with better materials, stronger foundation, someone who understood her worth. I went home to Rachel, who barely looked when I walked in with Emma. How were parents? Fine. I lied because the truth was too big for our small apartment, our small understanding of what we'd gotten ourselves into. That night, I made a decision. I couldn't get Sarah back, couldn't undo the damage I'd done to her, to us, to the future we could have had. But I could stop the cycle with Emma. I could make sure she knew she was loved without conditions, that she was never responsible for problems, that when someone loved her carefully and thoughtfully, it wasn't control, it was care. I could make sure she never settled for less than she deserved because someone convinced her she was broken. Even if it meant admitting I'd been wrong about everything. Even if it meant facing the truth about who I really was and what I'd really lost. Because the worst part wasn't losing Sarah. The worst part was realizing I'd lost her for all the wrong reasons, believed all the wrong people, and spent years thinking the problem was love when the problem was never learning how to accept it. Emma's 3 now. Rachel and I divorced when she was 18 months old. Turned out spontaneous love doesn't survive the reality of responsibility, and I wasn't willing to let my daughter pay the price for our immaturity. I see Sarah sometimes at Emma's press school. Her son goes there too, a bright-eyed 2-year-old who calls his father daddy, with the same adoration I once saw in Sarah's eyes. She's polite when we run into each other. Kind, even. But there's a distance there that wasn't there before I broke her trust, before I chose to believe lies about her love instead of believing in it. Last week, Emma asked why her mommy and daddy don't live together like her friends' parents do. I knelt down to her level and told her the truth, in words she could understand. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes that the people they love. But that's never ever the child's fault. She nodded solemnly and went back to playing. Later that night, I thought about calling Sarah, apologizing properly, explaining what I'd learned about my family, about the lies that shaped me into someone who could throw away everything good. But some damage can't be undone with explanations. Some doors close forever the moment choose to believe, don't deserve what's behind them. Now I teach Emma about love by showing her what it looks like: patient, kind, thoughtful preparation for tomorrow mixed with joy in today. I read her stories and plan her birthday parties and research preschools, and I never let anyone tell her that caring about her future means controlling her present. I'm building her foundation with better materials than mine was built with. But late at night, when she's sleeping and the apartment is quiet, I still think about Sarah. About the we could have built together if I'd been brave enough to believe I deserved it. About the wedding venue she showed me that day, full of happy couples who didn't sabotage their own love stories. About the children we might have had together, raised by parents who planned ahead because they cared, not because they wanted control. About growing old with someone who saw my worth before I learned to see it. I think about all of it, and I know this is my now loving my daughter enough to break the cycle, but living forever with the knowledge that I broke the best thing that ever happened to me, because I was too broken to recognize it as good. The truth doesn't set free when learn it too late, it just makes sure never forget the cost of believing lies about love.